Welcome back, everybody, to my channel, and this is another of my 2023 NFL offseason prediction series, and it's the Washington Commanders. Make sure to thumbs up this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section about what you think they're going to do in the offseason. And personally, they are a team that is in a bit of an interesting situation. They've got some really quality players, they got a really quality coaching staff, but they haven't figured out the quarterback position yet. There's a lot of rumors going around that they're telling these new potential offensive coordinators that Sam Howell is going to be the starting quarterback for them moving forward. And I don't know how much I'm buying that. I know that they're going to have a lot of turnover in that quarterback room, I would assume. Perhaps bring in some competition. We'll get to that. But they have a couple of guys who are for sure going to be on their way out. Probably just one high-level starter will be on his way out. We'll get to that as well. But this is really about, I think, Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron, who his job was really on the line this year. And I think that the job that he did, keeping this team alive in the playoff race for as long as he did, considering how much instability there was, I think they really showed that the instability of this team was under center. And that everything else was sort of fallen into place properly. They just need to get consistent play under center, and that's the one thing they really need to figure out. Now, Rivera's not an offensive guy, so how much of that responsibility falls on him as the head coach? I think the turnover of the offensive coordinators and the position coaches on offense is a sign that the scapegoats are sort of going out the window now, and this might be Ron's last chance this upcoming year, which is fair. I think that's fair. That division's not getting any easier. The Giants, the Eagles, and the Cowboys are going to be really good for a long time. So you're going to be fighting in that division for a while. And you need to get that quarterback situation figured out. You got some good pieces on defense. The defense did a really good job. You had some breakout guys like Benjamin St-Juste, who really did a good job developing throughout the year. You also got some good play out of guys like Danny Johnson. Some of those lower tier guys allowed you to move on from William Jackson and pick up a draft pick from Pittsburgh. You had Brian Robinson being brought in, who gave you a much more consistent running game. So there's a lot going on there in Washington that I think fans can be optimistic about. But let's go get into the coaching staff and start out with that. So let's start with Ron Rivera and this coaching staff. Ron is one of the better coaches in the NFL in terms of his knowledge, in terms of his experience. He had a pretty good run in Carolina and has had a decent run here in Washington. He was one of the more sought-after head coaching candidates when he left Carolina. And he's done exactly what he was supposed to do, which was really improve the defensive side of the ball. That's why you bring in a guy like Ron Rivera, defense and discipline. But there was a lot of issues with the offense, a lot of inconsistencies, and we can see it here with just a lack of, this is just a lot of things that they're lacking. In the points scored, the red zone efficiency, third down efficiency, gave up a lot of sacks, turned the ball over far too much. That's a sign of not being necessarily disciplined. And like we said, where they're moving on, getting new coordinators, turning the reins over to Sam Howell, it seems, away from Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke. We'll get to him. And they couldn't really run the ball into the end zone. That was a real lack of efficiency there, and I think that goes to the offensive line in those short yardage situations. Middle of the pack in passing touchdowns, but they just couldn't score really at all in the grand scheme of things. And this is something that they really need to address. And I think it does really start with the quarterback, because you do have Brian Robinson, you do have Terry McLaurin, you do have Jahan Dotson, you have Logan Thomas. You got quality guys, even some of the role players like Curtis Samuel and J.D. McKissick. You got some quality guys out there that you should have a upper half functioning offense, but you get a bottom five quarterback in there, and it's just not going to work out. Because then, and it leaves the defense especially hung out to dry. And look at the defense, how great they were this year. Other than the turnovers and the passing touchdowns, they didn't give up a lot of passing yards. They gave up a lot of rushing yards. They gave up a lot of yards in general. And that's because they were playing with an offense that kept turning the ball over and giving the opposing team short fields. And yet they still were seventh in points allowed. That's a testament to the third down percentage, the best third down defense in the NFL, eighth in red zone percentage. They kept this team in so many games. So if you get some type of competent, functioning offense, a top 20, top 15-ish, top 16-ish offense, you could probably be a 10-11 win team with this kind of defensive performance, especially if you continue to add little pieces to the defense that will make them even more efficient, even more dominant in certain situations. So we're looking at a starting salary cap of $12.1 million, but they have a lot of room to clear up here without taking a lot of cap penalty whatsoever. So we're going to move on here. We're going to talk about the cuts first. Carson Wentz, $26.1 million in cap savings. Easy peasy. Get him out of there. Andrew Norwell, who played absolutely horrendously. His graded out for the season was absolutely god-awful. $4.3 million in cap savings. You can get him out of there. You can get younger at that position. You have Trey Turner, who also had a terrible season. He was an impending free agent. He's gone. Bobby McCain, $4.4 million. You can get younger in the defensive back room as well. I'm looking to actually trade Antonio Gibson, get a $1.2 million cap savings, maybe get like a 5th round pick for him, like a in middle of the day 3 pick, because you do have JD McKissick there. You do have Curtis Samuel, who's like a versatile slot receiver, running back, hybrid guy. And you got Brian Robinson, who's more traditional running back. So why not get a little bit of value for Antonio Gibson while he has it? And then there's 2 free agents that I saw, impending free agents. Taylor Heineke, give him $10 million, stick around for a year. He does keep the fan base fired up. He did keep them in a lot of games with some quality performances. He wasn't as great as people were saying he was, that's for sure, but he was so much better than the other options. And I think it's in case you don't get a quarterback that you like in the draft, this opens it up where you at least have somebody there with some experience behind Sam Howell, who's apparently going to be the starter. And then Danny Johnson, a $3 million cap hit just to bring him back as a cornerback in that room. You hope that you can draft somebody who can be higher on the depth chart than him, but you can't discount that he did play quite well considering the circumstances when given opportunities. I'd be remiss to not mention Daron Payne, who's an impending free agent here. I just think that the price tag on Daron Payne to pay him and Jonathan Allen, 2 interior defensive linemen, the same, like close to $20 million a piece, when you're going to have Montez Sweat that you want to retain, when you're going to have Chase Young, who when he has been healthy has been quite good. You want to create some cap space perhaps for him. And you got some contract extensions coming up all over the place that you want to be able to afford. I'm not sure that getting a second interior defensive lineman when you can supplement what he does with Fedarian Mathis, who you drafted, and maybe somebody in free agency that's sort of more of a middle of the pack role-playing guy, and you can have somewhat of a rotation around Jonathan Allen with that guy and with Fedarian Mathis. I think it's just more efficient spending of their salary cap to not do that. Had they not had Jonathan Allen already, and then I could see Daron Payne, definitely them wanting to keep him around. But when you have that money invested in Jonathan Allen, it's really difficult to pay 2 guys like that, especially when they play both on the interior defensive line. So that does open them up for $37 million in salary cap spending. I really like that number because they can really fill out a couple of their needs here in free agency. They got some high draft capital to help pay their draft picks. And they need a quarterback, of course. Been hammering that over everyone's head. They need a quarterback. I can also see them wanting to bring in a tight end. I think Michael Mayer is sort of an outside threat to be drafted by them in this upcoming first round. Depending on how the rest of the draft shapes out. I wouldn't necessarily count on it, but I think it's an interesting thought that they may decide to go that route, considering Logan Thomas is just not reliable health-wise all that much anymore. But I would put the offensive line as a more higher priority. I would put cornerback, of course, there as a higher priority as well. And then linebacker, getting someone next to Jamin Davis that's a little better than Cole Holcomb, who I don't think they'll bring back. You want to get maybe get two guys in there that do different things to help Jamin Davis out, who you hope is a 3-down linebacker. So I was looking at free agency, and I saw Isaiah Wynn is hitting the free agency market. He didn't have a great year with the Patriots, much at all. But I do like his versatility to play tackle or guard, play on both sides of the offensive line. And to bring him in on a $5.5 million cap hit, considering you have that money, I think you could perhaps bring it out of him, because he did provide quality play at some point for the Patriots. It just kind of fell off this year into a ditch. So, getting him in there, you at the very least can get a guard or a tackle out of this guy. You have a lot of space on that offensive line to fill out as it is. So getting maybe somebody who has a little bit of experience, they did this with Eric Flowers. They brought in Eric Flowers and really turned his career around, temporarily at least. So I can think they can do the same for Isaiah Wynn. I see Chris Wormley out there, who had a great year for the Steelers. He had graded out very well. Giving him a $7 million cap hit. This is where he's that second half. You're using Wormley and Fedarian Mathis to basically replace Daron Payne. And considering that the cap number is going to be those two guys, it's going to be less than a $10 million cap hit because you drafted Mathis, I think it was in the 3rd round or the 4th round. And now you're getting Wormley here for $7 million. Wormley would be the more, would probably see more time than Mathis, but then this would allow a good healthy rotation on the interior defensive line for much less money. And I think that there's also now less obligation to just give high amounts of playing time to one guy. Now you got Jonathan Allen in there, and you can have that other spot filled out according to the situation that comes up and not feeling like you have to play Daron Payne because you're paying him $20 million. So the final cap number going into the draft and the second and third wave of free agency is $24.5 million, which I think is a very good situation for this team to be in because they do have some needs that if somebody that's a veteran presence pops up or they don't fill a certain need in the draft to a degree that they feel comfortable with, they can turn around and they can come up with a solution in the veteran market. But looking at their draft strategy, I feel in the first 2 rounds, I think cornerback and the offensive line are easy things to address. Getting one of the top 3 or 4 corners, I think, is well within reach. But it's possible that they would like maybe Emmanuel Forbes, maybe a Jalen Jones, maybe Eli Ricks, that they feel they can get in the 2nd round that would fulfill the same way that they would getting a guy in the 1st. And maybe they decide to pass that off to getting one of the offensive tackles, like Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, or Peter Skoronski if he falls. I think that is really where they're going to fall. I talked about Michael Mayer. I think that's sort of like an outside pie in the sky type of a deal. They could perhaps trade down. I didn't write this one out, but they could perhaps trade down and then draft maybe the Trenton Simpson and accumulate more draft picks and then fill out these other needs. But I think a guy they should really strongly consider is Hendon Hooker. Now, his injury and perhaps being out in his rookie year is going to kill his draft stock a bit. But that doesn't change that he could be a quality player and a quality quarterback. So the ability to maybe at the end of day 2 trade back up into the 3rd round and grab him and take a flyer on him, and then you got Hendon Hooker, you got Taylor Heineke, and you got Sam Howell competing again. There could be something there for the future, and it could be something that if there is failed quarterback play, it gives Ron Rivera almost an out and be like, well, we drafted Hendon Hooker. He didn't get a chance to play this year. If we give him a chance to play, he should be the guy. So it almost buys him another year in the event that Sam Howell and Taylor Heineke couldn't figure it out themselves. I think that it should be considered. It really should. I wouldn't invest in they're not going to be in reach of the first three quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson, Tanner McKee, they might not be able to get either one of those either, but I would still probably pass on, at the very least, Tanner McKee if he's there in the second round, just for this reason, is that you can fill out other needs, and then you just hope Sam Howell works out, snipe Hooker at the end of the third, come back into the third round and get him. And then you're dealing with these low investment quarterbacks, but you could find your franchise in one of them. And it's just to me, I'm trying to think for Ron Rivera and how I would protect my job in the event this all backfires completely, which is very likely with Sam Howell and Taylor Heineke on their own. And you want to have something sort of in your back pocket to pull out and be like, but what about this? What about this? And that this would be Hooker, not a Hooker. Not a Hooker, Hendon Hooker, the player. Not a Hooker. That would be bad if Ron Rivera pulled that out. That would be bad. Be very bad. And there it is. My offseason predictions for the Washington Commanders. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of my predictions and what are your own personal predictions. And thumbs up the video and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you guys sticking around and coming back for the next video. I will see you guys then. Thank you.